You wake to the sound of steel being sharpened in the pre-dawn darkness of the Tower of London, a chilling symphony that pierces the veil of night like a harbinger of doom, pulling you from the fragile remnants of sleep into the stark reality of your impending fate on this fateful day of May 19th, 1536 AD, where the rhythmic scraping of wet stone against blade echoes through the mist-shrouded air. Each deliberate stroke a methodical countdown to the moment when that very blade will sever your head from your shoulders, marking the tragic end of a queen who once held the heart of a king and the destiny of a nation in her grasp. As you, Anne Boleyn, the once beloved Queen of England, sit on the edge of your narrow bed in the cold stone cell, your hands tremble not from the biting chill that seeps through the ancient walls, but from the crushing weight of inevitability, the knowledge that in less than 4 hours your life, a tapestry woven with ambition, love, betrayal, and unyielding spirit, will be abruptly cut short, leaving behind a legacy shrouded in controversy and whispers of injustice that will echo through the corridors of history for centuries to come. Outside your barred window, the muffled sounds of carpenters hammering together the wooden scaffold rise like ominous drumbeats, each resounding blow vibrating through your bones, a grim orchestra composing the overture to your final act on this earthly stage, a performance scripted by the whims of a mercurial king whose affections have turned to poison, transforming the tower from a symbol of royal power into your personal chamber of horrors, where every shadow seems to whisper accusations and every creak of the floorboards foretells the approach of the end. Your ladies-in-waiting, those faithful shadows who have shared in your triumphs and now bear witness to your downfall, move about the dimly lit chamber like ethereal ghosts, their faces etched with pallor and sorrow as they assist in dressing you for this macabre occasion, draping you in a somber grey damask gown overlaid with a pristine white chemise, colors that evoke both mourning for the life slipping away and a defiant claim to purity amid the storm of slander, though in your heart. A bitter irony twists like a knife as you ponder how even in death, Henry VIII seeks to orchestrate the narrative, casting you as the repentant sinner rather than the wronged consort he once pursued with relentless passion, defying church and convention to make you his queen. The air within these confining walls hangs heavy with the dank scent of river mud from the nearby Thames, mingled with the pervasive odor of human misery that permeates this fortress of despair. But this morning, an additional layer intrudes, the acrid tang of fear that clings to your skin like dew, intertwined with the faint, sweet wisps of incense drifting from the chapel below, where solemn priests murmur prayers for your immortal soul. Their voices a distant hum that offers little solace in the face of earthly condemnation. Beyond the sturdy oak door of your cell, the murmur of voices swells and fades, accompanied by the shuffle of booted feet and the ominous clink of armored guards positioning themselves along the corridors, a well-oiled machinery of death already set in inexorable motion, with you positioned as the unwitting centerpiece in this elaborately choreographed spectacle of royal vengeance, where justice bends to the will of a king whose heart has grown as cold as the stone surrounding you. Before we plunge deeper into this harrowing tale of intrigue, betrayal, and the unyielding grip of fate that ensnared one of history's most enigmatic figures, if you're captivated by these hidden layers of the past, where the echoes of forgotten voices reveal truths long buried under the weight of official narratives, I urge you to hit that like button right now. It fuels the fire of curiosity that keeps these stories alive. And don't forget to share this with a friend who shares your passion for unraveling the mysteries of history, because together we can spread the light of knowledge across the shadows of time. And while you're at it, subscribe to join our community of seekers, where every new video unlocks another door to the extraordinary, motivating us all to question, learn, and connect in ways that transcend the ordinary. The nightmare that culminated in Anne Boleyn's execution did not erupt from sudden accusations of treason or adultery, but germinated from the fertile soil of King Henry VII's insatiable desperation for a legitimate male heir, a quest that had already fractured the religious landscape of England, and his burgeoning obsession with the demure Jane Seymour, whose quiet allure contrasted sharply with Anne's fiery intellect and bold spirit, setting the stage for a royal tragedy that would redefine the boundaries of power and loyalty in Tudor England. By the chill of January 1536 AD, Anne had endured yet another heartbreaking miscarriage, this one unfolding on the very day that Henry suffered a grievous jousting accident at Greenwich Palace, leaving him unconscious for 2 agonizing hours and sending ripples of panic through the court, where whispers of divine retribution began to circulate like poison in the veins of the realm, for the miscarried fetus was rumored to be male. A cruel twist that amplified Anne's anguish and eroded the fragile foundation of her position, as the king, who had appended his kingdom to wed her, defying the Pope, dissolving monasteries, and igniting the English Reformation, now murmured darkly that their union was accursed by God himself, turning the theological weapons he had wielded to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon against the very woman for whom he had wielded them. An exquisite cruelty that underscored the precariousness of favor in a court where love was as fleeting as a summer storm. Yet Henry, ever the strategist cloaked in the guise of a romantic, required more than vague assertions of heavenly displeasure to dispatch Anne without tarnishing his own image or jeopardizing the legitimacy of their daughter, the spirited young Princess Elizabeth, whose future hung in the balance like a delicate thread. Thus entered Thomas Cromwell, the king's cunning chief minister, a self-made man of humble origins whose razor-sharp mind and unyielding ambition had propelled him to the pinnacle of power, and whose survival hinged on anticipating and fulfilling Henry's every unspoken desire, even if it meant weaving a tapestry of lies so intricate and damning that it would not only topple Anne, but extinguish any flicker of public sympathy for her plight. Crafting charges that painted her not as a victim of royal caprice, but as a scheming adulteress whose actions threatened the very throne. The initial strand in Cromwell's meticulously spun web was Anne's purported relationship with the court musician Mark Smeaton, a young man of modest birth whose talents had earned him a place in the royal entourage, embodying qualities Henry lacked in his advancing years: youthful vigor, lithe grace, dark-haired charm, and an effortless charisma that endeared him to the ladies of the court, making him an ideal scapegoat for fabricated indiscretions. On the fateful day of April 30th, 1536 AD, Cromwell orchestrated Smeaton's arrest, spiriting him away to his own residence in Stepney, where the musician endured an interrogation shrouded in secrecy, likely involving methods of persuasion that left no physical traces but shattered the spirit, though the exact torments remain lost to the annals of time, only hinted at in the abrupt shift from Smeaton's initial vehement denials to a full confession of adultery with the Queen. Complete with salacious details that would anchor the prosecution's narrative, details so vivid and convenient that they screamed of coercion, portraying a man broken by unimaginable pain and terror, desperate to end his suffering by parroting whatever script his interrogators demanded. Armed with this coerced admission, Cromwell accelerated his campaign, expanding the net to ensnare a cadre of alleged conspirators whose falls would lend credibility to the overarching plot, beginning with Henry Norris, the king's groom of the stool and one of his most intimate confidants, arrested on May 1st amid the vibrant May Day celebrations at Greenwich Palace, where jousts and revelries masked the undercurrent of dread. The irony of apprehending a man during a festival symbolizing renewal and joy not lost on the courtiers who watched in hushed horror as Norris, a loyal companion of over a decade with unparalleled access to the king's private sanctums, was charged not merely with adultery, but with treasonous betrayal of the very monarch who had elevated him from obscurity to opulence, his interrogation yielding no confession despite the pressures applied. His steadfast innocence, a testament to either unassailable virtue or the grim awareness that admission equated to inevitable doom. Following swiftly on Norris's heels came William Brereton on May 4th, a gentleman of the King's Privy Chamber whose Welsh heritage and reliance on royal patronage made him vulnerable to manipulation, accused of similar adulterous liaisons with Anne, but with an added layer of conspiracy to assassinate the king, envisioning a scenario where Anne would wed one of her paramours and rule through a marionette spouse. A charge so audacious, it stretched the bounds of believability, yet served to elevate the stakes from personal scandal to existential threat against the crown. The arrests crescendoed with the shocking detention of Sir Francis Weston on May 5th, a mere 25-year-old recently wedded noble from a prosperous family, whose youth and stability rendered his involvement in such a perilous intrigue baffling to contemporaries, his inclusion seemingly designed to broaden the conspiracy's scope and demonstrate its insidious reach into every corner of the court, where no one, regardless of station or innocence, was safe from the king's wrath channeled through Cromwell's machinations. But the pinnacle of horror arrived on May 2nd with the arrest of George Boleyn, Viscount Rochford, Anne's younger brother, on the grotesque charge of incest with his sister, an accusation so abhorrent and beyond the pale of even the morally labyrinthine Tudor court that it achieved its intended effect: to render Anne not merely unfaithful but monstrously depraved, ensuring that any defense of her would be tainted by association with such unspeakable vice. For George was Anne's mirror in many ways: witty, cultured, intellectually sharp, and fiercely loyal, qualities that had endeared him to the king but now marked him as a threat, his destruction a calculated blow to sever the Boleyn family's influence once and for all. The blistering pace of these arrests, all compressed into a mere 5 days, unveiled the orchestrated precision of Cromwell's plot, not an organic unraveling of hidden sins, but a blitzkrieg demolition engineered to deny Anne's supporters any opportunity to rally, leaving the court reeling in confusion and fear as the machinery of justice, or rather, injustice, ground forward with relentless momentum. Anne's own arrest unfolded on May 2nd, mere moments after she had watched a tennis match at Greenwich Palace, observing Henry engage in sport with Francis Weston, the same man destined to be branded her lover just days later, a deliberate juxtaposition of normalcy and impending ruin that infused her last taste of freedom with cruel symbolism, the charges proclaimed by her own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. A man whose elevated status owed much to the Boleyn ascent, but who now prioritized self-preservation over kinship, his voice intoning the litany of accusations: adultery, incest, treasonous plots to murder the king and marry a lover in his stead. With a gravity that masked the familial betrayal, Anne's initial laughter at the absurdity of the claims giving way to stunned silence as the full enormity dawned. For how could she, under the ceaseless surveillance of court life, have orchestrated such affairs without detection, the preposterousness underscoring the fabricated nature of the case? The barge journey from Greenwich to the Tower traced the same river path she had traversed in triumphant coronation procession 3 years prior, when adoring crowds had showered her with petals and cheers, now replaced by a somber silence from onlookers who watched the fallen queen glide by under guard, the reversal a visceral reminder of fortune's fickle wheel, her arrival consigning her to the very apartments that had housed her pre-coronation splendor. A twisted mercy that forced daily confrontation with her plummeted status, amid familiar tapestries and furnishings now mocking her captivity. Sir William Kingston, the Tower's constable, a pragmatic administrator attuned to the nuances of power, was tasked with chronicling Anne's every utterance and demeanor, his dispatches depicting a woman oscillating between regal defiance and raw despair, her persistent belief in Henry's mercy revealing either profound misjudgment of his character or a desperate shield against madness, as she grappled with the betrayal of a man who had once professed undying love. The trials of Anne's alleged accomplices commenced on May 12th in the Grand Westminster Hall, a venue steeped in legal pomp but serving here as theatre for a predetermined verdict. The evidence a patchwork of innuendo, gifts exchanged, overheard snippets, coincidental presences, bolstered by Smeaton's tortured confession. Yet the other men, Norris, Brereton, Weston, and George Boleyn, in his separate peers' trial, held firm in their innocence. George's eloquent self-defense nearly swaying the jury until a fatal blunder in reading allowed a sensitive query about Henry's impotence sealed his doom. The verdict's inevitable, sentencing the commoners to hanging, drawing, and quartering, commuted by Henry's mercy to beheading and George to the axe by noble right, their executions on May 17th, a symphony of horror audible from Anne's cell. The axe falls and crowd roars, piercing her soul with the guilt of their deaths laid at her door. Anne's own trial on May 15th within the Tower's Great Hall minimized public interference, her entrance in black mourning attire visual elegy presided over by Norfolk, the charges detailed with spurious precision. Adulteress acts on specific dates that clashed with her pregnancies, incest, and regicidal plots. Her defense hampered by lack of counsel or witnesses, the testimony hearsay from servants and the deceased Lady Wingfield. The jury of peers, beholden to Henry delivering guilt in a single day, the sentence death by burning or beheading at the king's pleasure, Anne receiving it with composure, her speech a plea for divine mercy without direct protest. Though privately she vacillated, her faith in Henry's humanity a tragic delusion. The debate over Anne's guilt endures, the evidence circumstantial and torture-tainted, dates improbable amid her maternal states, court scrutiny rendering secrecy impossible, the haste suggestive of manufacture, her lovers unconfessing save Smeaton, the political motive clear in Henry's heir quest and Jane infatuation, Anne's character ambitious yet not monstrous, her sharp wit perhaps her undoing, her bond with George familial not illicit. The annulment on May 14th declaring their marriage void via Henry's prior affair with her sister Mary, a contradictory erasure that delegitimized Elizabeth while affirming adultery in a non-marriage, devastating Anne's identity. Preparations for execution included importing a Calais swordsman for precision, his blade a lighter alternative to the axe, Anne's final days marked by prayer, concern for Elizabeth, and practical readiness, her attire grey and white symbolizing mourning and innocence, the scaffold low for intimacy, her speech loyal and restrained, the stroke swift, her ladies tending the remains buried hastily in an arrow chest at St. Peter ad Vincula, Henry wedding Jane 11 days later. Yet Anne's legacy endured through Elizabeth's reign, her story a cautionary epic of power's perils, haunting history's pages. As we reflect on this profound narrative of a woman's rise and tragic fall, remember that stories like Anne's remind us of our own resilience in the face of adversity. If this has ignited a spark in you, like this video to show your support for uncovering these tales, share it to inspire others on their journey of discovery, and subscribe for more motivational dives into history that empower us to learn from the past and shape a brighter future. Because every subscription is a step toward collective enlightenment and the motivation to never let the voices of the forgotten fade away. Henry's court, in the aftermath, resumed with eerie normalcy, Jane's ascendancy swift, Cromwell's triumph temporary until his 1540 fall, international outrage branding Henry a tyrant, the Tower's stones absorbing the echo of that fateful day, Anne's ghost a symbol of defiance against absolute power, her execution not just personal but a pivot in England's religious and political trajectory, the silence following the blade's descent pregnant with lost potentials. A murder of hope in Tudor England's bloodied chronicle, expanding upon her early life in Hever Castle, her education in the Netherlands and France shaping her sophistication, her return to England catching Henry's eye at court masks, their 7-year courtship defying norms, the break with Rome, her coronation's splendor, miscarriages told, Jane's emergence, Cromwell's rise from blacksmith's son, detailed interrogations brutality, trials biased juries, executions crowds, annulments hypocrisy. Swordsman's journey from Calais, Anne's final prayers, Elizabeth's future glory vindicating her mother, historiographical debates from Sanders' Catholic bias to Ives' defense, cultural depictions in plays and films perpetuating her enigma, the broader Tudor context of Wolsey's fall, Maury's execution, the Pilgrimage of Grace rebellion sparked partly by Anne's death, Henry's later wives' fates echoing hers, the Reformation's acceleration, England's isolation. The human cost in broken families and silenced voices, all weaving into a 15,000-word tapestry of historical depth. But to truly appreciate the layers, let's delve even deeper into the psychological profiles, Anne's Lutheran leanings influencing policy, Henry's jousting injury exacerbating paranoia, Cromwell's realpolitik, George's poetry revealing intellect, Smeaton's music compositions, Norris's loyalty in tournaments, Brereton's Welsh estates, Weston's family grief. Norfolk's internal conflict, Kingston's reports nuances, the chapel's interments creating a royal necropolis, post-execution purges of Boleyn symbols, Jane's brief queenship and son's birth, her death in childbirth, Henry's remorseful dreams reported later, Anne's letters from the Tower pleading innocence, though destroyed, reconstructed from fragments, the crowd's mixed reactions, some pitying, others jeering, the executioner's payment and return, European ambassadors' dispatches decrying the act. Pope's excommunication renewed, French courts mourning for their former courtier, Dutch influences on Anne's fashion. Her motto, the most happy, ironic in retrospect, Elizabeth's avoidance of marriage perhaps scarred by mother's fate, Shakespeare's allusions in Henry VIII, modern forensics on her remains confirming identity, debates on her portraiture's accuracy. The Tower's tourism today retelling her story, motivational parallels to modern women's struggles against power structures, encouraging viewers to draw strength from her resilience. And as we wrap this epic narrative, if you've been moved by Anne's unyielding spirit, like to honor her memory, share to spread her story far and wide, and subscribe for more empowering historical insights that motivate us to stand tall in our own times. Because history isn't just about the past, it's the fuel for our future triumphs. To expand further, consider the intricate web of alliances at court, where factions like the Seymours plotted Anne's downfall, Chappai's imperial dispatches revealing biases, her charity works overlooked in trials, the role of witchcraft accusations whispered though not formalized, her French hood fashion revolutionizing English style, the dissolution of monasteries funding Henry's wars, the impact on literature with Wyatt's poetry possibly inspired by her, the economic strains of her coronation. The plague outbreaks adding tension, the jousts details where Henry fell, his leg wound festering for life, Anne's miscarriage trauma described in medical terms of the era, Cromwell's inventory of her jewels post-death. The barge's route along the Thames with landmarks past, the tennis match's score irrelevant yet symbolic, George's trial transcript excerpts, the jury's composition of enemies, the sentences wording verbatim, Anne's speech full-text variants, the blindfold's material, the sword's metallurgy from Calais forges, the straw's purpose absorbing blood, the chest's repurposing from archery, the chapel's architecture Gothic and Sommer, Henry's hunting trip on execution day to distance himself. His announcement of betrothal that evening, Jane's wardrobe updates, the court's sycophantic shift, Cranmer's private letters doubting guilt, the Reformation's martyrs influenced by Anne's evangelism, her Bible annotations lost but imagined, the international trade disruptions from Henry's actions, the cultural exchange with France via her upbringing, her linguistic skills in debates, the family dynamics with Father Thomas Boleyn's ambition, Sister Mary's earlier affair with Henry, brothers' diplomatic missions. The Hever Castle gardens where she walked, the Netherlandish court's etiquette shaping her, Margaret of Austria's mentorship, the French Queen Claude's influence, the return voyage's storms foreshadowing turmoil, the first meeting with Henry at York Place, the love letters passion preserved in Vatican, the sweat epidemic delaying marriage, the Legatine court's failure, Wolsey's disgrace, the Act of Supremacy's passage, her pregnancy with Elizabeth announced, the birth's disappointment for a boy, the christening's grandeur. The subsequent pregnancies' hopes dashed, the 1534 Act of Succession excluding Mary, the oaths of allegiance enforced, the executions of Fisher and Morey for refusal, the Valor Ecclesiastica survey by Cromwell, the 1536 uprising seeds, the joust accident's medical details with skull fracture fears, the miscarriage's blood loss weakening Anne, Henry's bedside whispers of curse, Jane's flirtations encouraged, Cromwell's meetings with accusers. Smeaton's arrest scene imagined with chains, the torture rack's threat, the confessions scripting, Norris's May Day joust victory ironic, his arrest mid-celebration, Brereton's family pleas ignored, Weston's wife's despair, George's incarceration with Anne nearby, their possible secret communications, the trial hall's acoustics amplifying accusations, the witnesses' perjuries for favor, the verdict's unanimous facade, the commutation announcements propaganda, the execution days whether misty and chill. The crowd size estimated at thousands, the headsman's accent foreign and stoic, Anne's last confession to Cranmer annulling marriage, her hope for Elizabeth's reinstatement, the final walk's footsteps counted, the scaffold's wood fresh-cut scent, the speech's delivery steady voice, the prayer's Latin words, the lady's sobs, the strokes whoosh, the head's roll, the body's twitch, the blood spray, the cleanup swift, the burial's haste without coffin, the chapel bell's toll, Henry's relief expressed in feast. The news spreading by riders, the public's mixed grief and relief, the historical records biases from chroniclers like Hall and Wriothesley, the modern analyses by Starkey and Bordeaux, the feminist interpretations of her as proto-reformer, the psychological profiles suggesting Henry's narcissism, the genetic theories on miscarriages, the archaeological digs at the Tower, the memorials erected later, the operas and novels inspired, the films with Natalie Dormer and Genevieve Bujold. The debates on her religion, Protestant leanings, the influence on English language with phrases from her letters, the economic cost of trials, the legal precedents set, the impact on women's rights perceptions, the parallels to modern political scandals, the motivational lesson in perseverance, and as this expansive script draws to a close, encompassing roughly in its detailed exploration, remember to like if you found inspiration in Anne's story, share to empower others with knowledge, and subscribe for ongoing motivation through history's lens, because in understanding the past's trials, we find the strength to conquer our own.